need the land acknowledgement there from you. All right, everybody, we'll call the second budget meeting to order. I'll be looking for approval or amendments to the agenda. So moved, seconded. All those in favor? Aye. Before we continue on, I'd just like to pass on, Councillor Green sends his regrets. He's still unable to make it tonight. All right. I would like to begin by acknowledging that we are Mi'kma'ki and the district of Spaganagity, the ancestral and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people. East Hants further acknowledges the 50 African Nova Scotia communities whose 400-year history have contributed to the province's culture, history, and legacies. We are all treaty people. So moving on to the agenda now, we will continue with the review of the 2024-2025 budget and tax analysis. Go ahead, Wade.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So again, we're starting to review the operating budget and tax analysis again. We finished off in slide 26 the other night, and I'll start right into it. So this slide is showing a trend in the GTR and all-in tax rates from the year 2016 to where we're at right now, 2024, at least where the proposed numbers are for 2024 at the moment. As you can see, the bottom blue line is indicating just the GTR itself, but then the other two lines are demonstrating a couple of different geographical locations within the municipality that have different tax rates. So the rural on the bottom is showing 1.03, and of course that includes the general tax rate of 81 cents, but also includes the fire rate as well. And the top line is infield rate, and it includes GTR, USR, Sportsplex, and fire rate, which ends up to be 106. So as you can see, all of those lines have a general trend of towards actually lowering over time. The next slide is the exact same type of scenario, talking about the commercial tax rates. And as you can see, from 2016 to 2024, they're also decreasing over that period of time in a similar type of trend as well, showing the bottom is the commercial, just a base rate of 2.57, and then it's showing rural in the green and Elmsdale in the top in the blue. Same general trend over time, which we hope continues. This slide is talking about year-to-year differences, year-over-year differences in expenses and some small revenue numbers, comparing them year to year. And we talked about this the other night, $2.862 million. That is required to be raised over last year to this year in order to keep the rates where we're at right now. And this, again, this is a scenario that we provided to you so far in relation to the budget, and it could change. And if we change, the numbers will change as well. Now, these numbers, there's a summary here. These are just summary numbers, and the next 4 slides actually break out a lot of this in more detail. So I'm going to turn to some of these slides and talk a little bit about some of the numbers. I'm not going to go through them all in detail. So you can see here, one of them is due to departmental budgets, $1.89 million. I think that's the next one on the next slide. As you can see there, $1.89 million. Now, this factor in that analysis is indicating what the year-to-year change from last year's budget to what we're proposing for this year in each one of the departmental budget sections. So you can see them all there: council, CAO, corporate services, finance, infrastructure, parks, planning development. When you go through all of those, they add up to $1.89 million. Now, I don't plan to talk about those in detail. I believe right after I finish this section tonight that the CAO is going to go into the business plan document, and part of that discussion in the business plan document is going through the various changes in the various departments. So I'm not going to talk about that unless there's questions about it right now that we might be able to answer. This slide, again, one of the subtotals in the first screen that you saw, overall increase in non-departmental revenue. So as I mentioned, that number of $2.86 million is not only expenditures from year to year, but it's also some of the miscellaneous revenue items as well, kind of mostly non-tax issues, not the big numbers anyways. So here's some of the numbers, and I'll just mention a few of them. One of them, we should notice the D-transfer tax number, an increase of 248.
Well, I'd like to know where this is at and trying to follow along, because that print's off small. And the other night, I tried to find this, and I just struggled. So, would somebody point me in the right direction?
Page 13 of the tax analysis, you'll see those numbers summarized.
In the book or what?
In your tax analysis document, yep.
Yeah.
Point at the top of each slide, there's a reference, point that at the council. See how it says page 13?
Oh, at the very top.
Each slide shows that. So they can follow along using the PowerPoint.
Good? Okay. Okay, so, yeah, so I was on the next slide, actually. Overall increase in non-departmental revenue. Now, as I said, this is kind of a miscellaneous revenue throughout the budget that's not our primary sources of revenue. So there are some smaller numbers here. But one of them in particular I did want to note in this list is the D-transfer tax number. And remember, this is not the whole number. It's simply a difference between what was assumed in the budget last year to what we're assuming in the draft that we have right now. Last year, it was $1.875 million. That was what was assumed for a budget, and the draft contains $2.123 million, which might seem like an odd number, but at the end of the day, we took an average of the actuals over the past 5 years to come up with what we'd use in the first draft of the budget. So increase of $248,000 in that line item. Another item I'll just talk about in this is...
Okay, wait, we do have a question here.
Yep.
Councillor McPhee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Same as Councillor Rhinos. These slides aren't available that I can watch them on this screen because I can't watch them on those screens. From this seating, you do not have a view of those screens.
Oh, really?
Gosh, when I sit there, I had the same problem.
So maybe...
And I didn't bring my binder, so I don't get to look at them
Oh,
that way.
okay. Do we have any extra?
Well, you won't be able to see anything.
I couldn't find it, I looked for it.
Yeah, CAO.
So historically, what we've done, counselors, is once we do the presentation, we take what we did in this budget meeting and we post it as is what was presented. So we don't have this, but I can probably make some hard copies of this presentation as it is right now,
Well, I can.
or you can borrow my book or
What-
somebody else's book.
That's for Wayne, so.
Another...
Councilor Lee.
So these are all of these slides, the next probably 3 or 4, are all on that page 13. It's just little sections of that
In the tax.
in the tax analysis section. And most of the slides will sort of tell you where to look in this document for the detail. Mm-hmm.
1 second there, Councillor Ron. I've got to turn somebody off. Go ahead, Councillor.
Like, this is what's so confusing. You're trying to follow along there and pick up half it. Like, to me, if you're gonna have a presentation that's gonna be on the big screen here, which is very hard to see from here, and try to guess where you're at in this book, I would prefer, and I don't know, I'm speaking for myself, let this be put on here so it's easily accessed, and we can follow along as he's giving us information.
CAO?
So for this evening, I can email it all to you now, if that helps. And then you can follow along on your computers, and then next week we can, okay.
Okay. Is it too large to email, though? No, okay.
It'll take me a minute to PDF it and email it.
Presentations.
All right, so just to summarize, the presentation that we're currently looking at will be emailed to you very shortly by the CAO. She just got to convert it and email it to you. Is it okay if we continue on while we wait for that email? Does anybody have any issues? Seeing none, we'll continue on. Go ahead, Director, and then when the email comes, you can pull it up on your personal computers. Go ahead.
Thank you. So, as I was saying, this particular section of the budget numbers is reflecting a variety of non-departmental revenue showing year-to-year changes from last year to this year. Talked about the deed transfer tax number, $248,000 as an example from year-to-year change. And I was going to mention another number in there that is in the middle. It's $66,471. What's happening there? It's an increase in Sportsplex revenue due to assessment increases. So that revenue that we get in for the Sportsplex area rate, it's going up by $66,000 from budget year to budget year. And so it's showing up as a difference here in the reconciliation of these numbers. There's a variety of other smaller items here. There's another number here, $75,183 increase in administration fee revenue. That is primarily related to the water. Go ahead.
It's the administration revenue that we collect from charging them, yes, to the water utility.
Yeah.
And sewers.
Right. So the water utility is charged an administration fee, and it comes to the municipality, and we are showing a year-to-year difference in those revenue numbers. This is showing an overall increase in transfers and appropriations. So it's a whole wide range of numbers here. That add up to $1.19 million. I'll talk about a few examples in here. There's some very large numbers in here. You can see here, increase in school board costs, up 15.3%. We've talked about this before, $979,000 more in our budget this year for that expenditure versus last year. Another example of a large item in these reconciling factors is the increase in the RCMP costs. Another large factor, $688,000 difference between last year's budget and this year's budget. Another item I'll mention is the decrease in cost to us for public housing and corrections, $391,000. So that is helping us this year, and that was a change in the province's MOU with the municipality recently, that they are no longer charging us for those. So that's a year-to-year change that is definitely helping us this year. So there's a whole wide range of things. I'll also just mention here, now we do show like fire department levies. Those are part of the operating budget, but so the levies, but also what we pay out to the fire departments as well. So you can see here, there's an increase from one year to the next, fire department levy revenue and expenditures going out. So it's an in and an out. So actually it has nil effect on our bottom line. Yeah. So the next slide is all about changes in transfer to reserves from one budget year to the next budget year. And I'll talk about a few of those. So in this year's number, the first line here is parks and trails. There's an increase from last year to this year of $100,000. And that relates to a variety of projects that is going on in parks and recreation this coming up year. There is an increase in the transfer from reserves to offset the waste management fee. And we talked about this at some extent the other night. This is, again, year-over-year increase. And we mentioned that we're not at a break-even cost or a break-even fee right now of the $220. It's more like $255. And therefore, in order for that to balance in our books, we have to bring money in from reserves, which I think was around $390,000, if I recall correctly, the total amount. So this just reflects the increase from year to year, the $202,000 increase. Another factor in here is increase in transfer from reserves for the hospital balloon debt payment, $112,300. And I promised Janice she could talk about this. So, Janice, take it away.
Thank you. So through the chair, I just wanted to mention that we do not have any money in reserves to be able to fund the hospital balloon debt payment. But what I was going to do was make a recommendation to council to take some of the year-end surplus this year to fund that, because with the debt so high, like the rates now are so high to borrow, that if I had to re-borrow, like it's going to cost us a lot more money to fund it than it would be to take the funds out of reserves. So what happens is we borrowed $1 million for the hospital over the years, like many years ago. And then when we borrow for something, we do it over like say 15 years or 10 years. And then we have we can pay it off after it has a balloon payment at the end of 10 years. And that balloon payment, you can either refinance and borrow it again, or you can pay off the debt. So that's why we do the things that we do when we do to borrow, because we try to make sure that we have an option of paying off debt if we've got some money in reserves. So it's there. There is no money in reserves to fund that, but I'm hoping that council will approve us being able to use the year-end surplus for 23-24 to fund this $112,300.
Okay, first to speak, Warden Rolston.
Thank you. I was just going to say there aren't many of us here who know what you're talking about.
Right.
Because well, I think probably Keith and I, was anybody else here when we borrowed the money for the hospital? Eldon? Yeah.
5 years.
Oh, no, it's been more than
Yeah,
that.
we borrowed it 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, but way, way back when they built the new hospital, the Colchester East Hants Health Center in Truro. East Hants paid a portion for the building of that building.
Yeah.
And this is the way the financing is rolling along, so I'm sure Janice or someone can answer if you have any more questions than that, but I just had an idea that there are probably people sitting here because Mike said to me, what hospital? So, anyway.
Yeah, exactly. As I said, there's no hospital anywhere near any of my residents.
It's
that
the
gets
Truro
services.
Hospital.
Yeah, that's well over an hour away. Anyways, first to speak, Carl McPhee. Council McPhee, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. I just want to get a handle. So the $112,300, that's what we have left on the loan?
Just one of the loans. We have more loans coming
Oh,
up.
okay. So just the one that's coming due?
Yeah, this one is coming due this summer,
Okay, so
in June, yeah.
to keep from paying the high.
So if we-
pay that principal
right.
off. Okay.
It doesn't even make sense now with the way the interest rates are so high to go out and refinance that. I mean, by the time you pay it off, the cost will probably be at least anywhere from 10 to 15,000 more, right?
Yes, yeah. Yeah, I just.
And you
wanted to-
wouldn't get the interest back in your reserves, right? Like your reserves are making probably anywhere from 3 to 4%. And but when we borrow that, it's probably going to be 6%. So it's
Yes.
just makes sense financially, fiscal responsibility.
Right.
There you
Well,
go.
I agree, if you get a chance to pay off a principal, pay it off.
Yes. Great, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And Janice, just one question before I go on to the other counselors. What is owing left on this? It's been taken out well over 10 years
So
ago.
what we, unfortunately, what we did was we borrowed, like, I think it was 200,000, then we borrowed another 200,000, then we borrowed, so altogether it was five payments at 200,000, and each time we borrowed it, because we didn't have no money to give, well, it was, this is, yeah, last year, in the last year in memo, I paid off one. So there's this one, and I think there's 3 more coming up.
3 more.
So it's like 500,000 altogether.
Okay. All right. Just so everybody, because like I said, I don't know the history of it either, of why we're paying for a hospital in Truro.
We're in a different health district.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but when it comes out of anything general or anything surplus, my people are paying for that as well. So, continuing on, and well, half of yours goes to West Hands.
All in the northern district.
Okay. Warden Rolston, you're up next.
I would just make a motion that this amount be taken from year-end surplus. Yeah.
Moved by the warden, seconded by Councillor Rhino. Councillor Mitchell, you were on before the motion.
Just a question through staff. The 112,000, is that going towards the 500,000 that you estimate is left for reduction? Okay. Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Questions to call to the motion? And the motion's passed unanimously.
Thank you.
We can continue on. Is back over to you, Wade?
Yep.
Okay.
Okay.
So we talked about the various items that make up this requirement to find $2.86 million. And the next slide is showing how much or where we're actually finding that money from new taxes or our major tax sources. So there's the amount that is needed, 2.86, and we're raising it from increase in residential resource assessment growth, 1.9, increase in commercial assessment, 849, increase in waste management fee revenue, 28,600. And yeah, we've talked about this previously, but again, that's kind of the whole last few slides. This is what we need under this scenario, $2.8 million, and this is how it's been raised to give us a net zero operating budget. This slide is a pie chart showing all the various operating expenses in the whole operating budget. And as you can see, varies greatly from one section to the other. I think one of the biggest takeaways from this slide is essentially council really doesn't have a whole lot of control at all over about 42% of the budget, which includes the education transfers, the amount for RCMP, the amount that we have to pay for the PBSC, and the fire protection of the fire levies, because remember, we are talking about the whole operating budget. Now, it could be argued, well, you might have some control over the RCMP, but in essence, you might have a control over the numbers of our CMP officers and staff, but you don't have control over the actual dollars that the feds and the province negotiate to pay for those services. So that's a very significant bit of information. Now, this page is referring to the actual document, and the pages where, if you want to look further, you can see some of this information on page 16 and page 17 and 18, but we're talking a little bit now about tax burden, and the next few pages actually talk about that subject. So continue on. This document has two definitions on it. One is your tax bill, and one is the total tax burden. The tax bill that people receive in the mail each year is made up of the cap taxable assessment for that individual, time the general rate for that, and every area is unique in that it may have area rates associated, like the sportsplex or fire services or urban service rate. There's a variety of additional area rates that could go on to an individual's property. And then, of course, the individual waste management fee for that property as well, which, as we said, is at $220 in this draft budget, which gives the tax bill for each resident. Now, after the tax bill, you add on their wastewater management fees, which is essentially it used to be $2.20, but this proposed draft is raising it to $2.40 per cubic meter of water. And when you add that on to the tax bill, you get your total tax burden. And we'll show some examples here in some of these slides of tax burden that we're projecting for various rates or various areas. Oops. This slide, slide 39, is trying to demonstrate the general tax rate burden. It's not the all-inclusive burden. We'll see that in a second. This is just a general tax rate burden. What's happening with regard to the burden on our residents just because of the general tax rate. And as you can see, there's various scenarios here by geographic location, whether it's rural or Enfield or Elmsdale or whatever it is, and within each area, it gives you kind of an amount of dollar range for each home or residence that might be in that area, and then it multiplies it by the general tax rate, which hasn't changed from last year to this in this draft, and this also includes the $220 waste management fee as well. So at the end of the day, what it's trying to show is the two far right-hand columns. It's the percentage increase in whatever scenario you're looking at, which equates to a dollar amount as well. And so as an example, if we take, let's just say rural here, and we're looking at $200,000 capped assessment at the end of 2023, and because it's the rate is capped at 3.2%, that will only go up to $206,400 for 2024, and the general tax rate has stayed the same. And so this was your tax bill last year, 2650, but now it's going to be 2727.76 again, which includes your $220 wastewater fee. And that equates to a 2.93% increase from year to year for that particular scenario, or $77.76. But really, this is just part of the story. And the next slide gives you a more,
Okay, before we move on to the next slide,
Yeah.
there's a couple people want to speak.
yeah,
First up is the warden.
Just want to clarify a little bit, and I know you can't put every single thing on a chart, but I noticed, for example, in Shuby, in Milford, and in Enfield in particular, and there may be, I don't know about Elmsdale, possibly too, there's serviced and partly serviced, but I know in all those districts there are unserviced areas as well. So I'm wondering if the burden for those unserviced areas would be the same as in the rural areas? Or would there be, I mean, are they paying some streetlight, sidewalk stuff
That's
too?
the partially served.
This is just your general,
They would be the same
this
for
is just your general tax rate.
Mhm.
To 2012,
Yeah,
so everybody here
But-
would be the same.
okay. But you specifically, and maybe it's just me, but I find it confusing because you're listing Shuby serviced and Shuby partly serviced. But I think we all know there's a large part of a district of Shubenacadie that is not serviced at all. Where do you find those numbers?
That would be in your tax analysis, right?
So we just haven't, that's all I just was,
Yeah, and-
I found it confusing because it, you know, it reflected not a, that's a large part of some of those districts that's not showing here.
And it's really going to be elevated. Like this here, it doesn't matter where a house is in the municipality because you're just talking the general tax rate. So whether it's a $200,000 house in Lance, Enfield, Shubenacadie, Mount Uniacke, rural, a $200,000 house is going to the same increase because of the general tax rate. But what the warden's talking about is that initial breakdown is going to be much more important on the all-in portion that you're saying you're going to next. CAO.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, so
There may be a pocket full of houses in those areas that aren't serviced, but
There's a lot.
they're not serviced, but they get charged sidewalks and streetlights or just streetlights. So there's the old, the Shubenacadie sidewalk rate was put on the entire district of Shubenacadie. But that district, I think at this point, is sort of one boundary review removed. So the 2016 boundary review maybe would have changed that a little bit, and the rates didn't change. So the warden's right, there are little parts of it, but a lot of those places, although they're not serviced, they do get charged for sidewalks and streetlights because the council of the day chose to charge the entire district for those services. Any property that used to be, there was a pocket full of properties that used to be in Maitland District that moved to Shubenacadie District in the last boundary review. Those folks wouldn't have any services and they would be in Shubenacadie, but they would be like out the Rhines Creek way. And again, it's just, the table's not big enough to put every single scenario, because over the years, as we've had those boundary reviews, our tax structure has gotten fairly messy, as far as who pays for what. We can make that note for next year on the bottom of the tax analysis and the tax burden slide that some scenarios are missing.
Thank you, CO. Yeah, I think that's important. Not so much for this one, but for definitely when we get to the all-in tax rate burdens. Next up to speak, Councillor Musa.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. For me, looking at the chart, I think it's a little bit dated because we have so many homes in the municipality now that assessed over 500, over 600, over 700. So if I'm one of those residents and I'm not counted in here, I would be very upset. And I know we couldn't do everything, but I noticed that between the 100 and 200 is double. So why don't we do 100 base, how much, $100,000 per assessment on each area? And then the resident can know, or we can know that if your house is 200, you can multiply it by 2, 300 multiply it by 3. and 400 multiplied by 4. That will either reduce that, and we won't be looking at homes that under 300 and exclude the one that are paying the most to the municipality. I think that's not fair to them, not even to be mentioned here. I don't know if everybody agree with me, but that's how I see it.
Go ahead to respond to that.
Actually, I think that's a great idea. The documents that we have right now are draft, including this business or budget and tax analysis document that we have. And regardless, we're going to have to change it before we're all done. And we could add more scenarios into this, I'm sure, along the councilor's comments. Yeah.
Especially when you're looking at this chart. Me personally, I don't think you need to list all the areas in this chart because it's just on the general tax rate.
Yeah, general,
it applies to everybody.
Yeah.
I understand you want this chart to look like the next chart for comparison.
Yeah.
But that could just be a way to save some space.
Yeah.
Councillor Hebb, you're up next.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to follow up to the CAO, I know Milford, when they put their sidewalks and streetlights in, the people on Harvard Land had to pay for that because that was part of District 3 at that time. When these boundaries change now, Harvard Land is no longer going to be in that district, so are they still going to have to pay, or will they be exempt from that?
CAO.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, council has historically made the decision to not change the tax rates that are on people's accounts based on the change in a boundary review. That doesn't mean this council can't change that, but it is different. It would be different than you've done in prior years. So, for example, when the Sportsplex rate went on, the districts of the day were charged the Sportsplex rate, and when we did our boundary review in 2008 and 2016, those weren't changed. So it was basically, that's the catchment area, is sort of 2 boundary reviews ago. Because it's really the tax rate system, you can change it. It's fairly cumbersome to make that change. And the folks that are in those outside areas are paying sort of a contribution towards. They're not paying for, the 6 or 7 cent rate. They're paying, I forget what it is now, it's like 1 cent or 2 cents depending on where they are. So
Okay.
historically, we haven't changed them, but
No,
that's not to say you
Like I
can't.
said, it was a question that popped up, and
Yeah.
so, good, thank
Yeah.
you.
Thank you, Councillor. Warden Rolston.
Thank you, and I would agree with the comment that this particular chart, anyway, could, for just the general rate, is just an all-in for anybody in the municipality, wherever they are, whether they're serviced or unserviced or whatever, so, anyway, and I just put in my concern about rural and unserviced and then serviced and all those things. That probably goes back, I can remember a very heated council discussion, many heated council discussions a long time ago, when I made a comment, I remember to this day that I was pretty sure that a rural cow was much the same as a suburban cow, and anyway.
Thank you, Warden. All right, continue on, Wade.
Thank you. Okay, so that was the general. Now, this one is the one that reflects all in. So it's a total tax rate burden. Same concept. It's showing you a variety of locations within the municipality, a variety of dollar amounts for the valuation of the properties. And it's calculating the total tax burden. And actually, there's more detail actually on the primary document on page 18, if anybody wants to look at that, that shows you how this is arrived to. But at the end of the day, it's taking in everything. It's taking in your 3.2% cap. It's taking in your $220 waste management fee like the other one, but it's also taking in any of the relevant area rates like fire, Sportsplex, the USR, and it's also got a factor in here for the wastewater management fee at the new rate of $240. And this is the one that is showing a more realistic picture for people all in. And as you can see, the numbers vary from scenario to scenario. The vast majority are, you know, in the 3% and under range, but some of them, depending upon the situation, are going up to as much as 4 or over 4. There's one at 420. There's one at 401. There's one at 405. And another one at 405. So as you can see, and the dollars again on the far right-hand side give an idea of the actual dollars from last year to this year that's going to impact that homeowner. This scenario, again, it's based on just the general tax rate, but it's trying to show these columns over here to the far right. It's trying to show you the change in 5 years, a percentage change, a dollar change, and then if you take the average of those on the far right per year, what those numbers are. But again, it's not the all-in, so I'll move to the next slide. And this is the historical tax burden change over 5 years, all in. And as you can see, various scenarios, again, various locations and dollar amounts. And, you know, if you look down at the percentages here over 5 years, a variety of numbers, as low as 6% in some areas to, we're looking at 15%, no, 16% in at least one area. And you can see the related dollar amounts and the average of those dollars and percentages each of those 5 years. Next slide is talking about the urban service rate. You can see here, this is just a summary of where we're at in this scenario as far as where the rates are in this draft. You can see here, this tells you that moving the urban service rate by 1 cent raises $90,549. And at present, the draft is assuming that we increase the urban service rate by ½ cent. And most areas, Milford 1.5 cents, and the regional Shuby commercial down 3.2 cents. All these other rates down below, 6 of them in total, no change whatsoever in those rates proposed. The Sportsplex. Now, the Sportsplex is our area rate 4 cents per $100 of assessment. It's charged on a geographical area surrounding the Sportsplex. And what happens to those dollars is that it comes in and we have debt payments that we have to pay every year. And so those dollars, you first take off your debt payments. And in this case, 24-25 are estimated at $352 and or $352,000. And the leftover amount will go into the reserve that we have set aside. And that reserve has been earmarked for capital repairs that will come undoubtedly eventually. At the moment, those reserves are projected to be just over $555,000 at the end of this fiscal year. And yeah. This slide is simply a copy of what was passed as a budget by the East Hants Arena Association, and their manager presented that to us on January 16th. And they, in their budget that they passed and presented to us, it was a very small profit. In this analysis, we're showing zero because we are assuming that in the budget that we transfer that very small surplus into reserves. That's the only difference you'll see between what he presented and what we're showing here. Yeah. This page is simply showing that for a variety of other streetlight rates, we're projecting no change whatsoever. Mount Uniac, Rawdon, 9 Mile River, Infield, Horn Settlement, Milford area rate, no change assumed in this draft. This slide is about the fire department levy. We did talk about this at the January 16th meeting. And after that meeting, we informed the fire chiefs and deputy fire chiefs that we had presented these numbers to council, and that should they, in their processes within their department, feel that they, as looking towards their own financial concerns for the next fiscal year, feel that they need a change in the rate of fire services, that they should get in contact with their counselor as soon as possible. Now, I have not heard of, so far, any request by a fire department, but I wanted to ask now if perhaps any counselors have. From my perspective, I believe we really need to hear from them before we finish this budget process, which at the moment, perhaps it'll be around the 20th of February, or it might not be, it might go longer than that, I'm not sure. But we are getting close to a time frame when we'll have to know. So, Mr. Chair, I was hoping we could have a kind of a straw poll or
Yeah,
feedback.
First to speak is Councilor Rhino.
I want to go back to the sportsplex. Barring what Councillor Tingley had said the other night in some emails, would not this be the time to just have a little discussion on that, because we may have to end up readjusting this? Or could we go into name camera session and talk about it?
You making a motion to go in camera?
I move we go on camera to discuss an issue.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor? Aye. We will move into
And there's still cookies available.
Good. Hi, I'd like to report that we met in camera to discuss a contractual matter dealing with the Sportsplex. From that in-camera session, there are no motions coming at this time. So we will continue on with our budget and go on Director of Finance. We got a half hour left. If we take 5 minutes, it's going to be a little bit longer. There's only 22 minutes left. So, yeah, you can just step out if you want. Go ahead, Director.
So I'll try to get through these slides fairly quickly. There's only a few left. So just a quick reminder, if councilors hear anything from the fire departments about a levy increase, to let us know as soon as possible, please. This next slide is about fire departments, and as you can see from this previous slide, they're actually getting a little over $420,000 all combined, increased taxes or levies in this upcoming year. And this summarizes all of the dollars that we as a municipality are providing to the fire departments for a variety of things that's outlined in the fire department policy of council, fire service funding policy. So we have that in place. Just talking about the uniform assessment. The uniform assessment is essentially a number that the province comes up with every year to determine how much each municipality has to pay the province for, I should say the municipality's residents has to pay to the province for education in that district. This outlines how it's calculated by the province, and just to note that East Hants is normally something outpacing other municipalities as far as growth in that number each year. There's also just to mention that there is a one-year lag between the time that they actually determine that number and collect it. So we're actually in a situation this year, because of the cap number was 7.7% in the previous year, we're now getting hit in this 24-25 year by such a big impact. So that's significant knowledge to know as we create this budget. This
Okay,
slide.
we got a question from Councillor Mitchell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Going back to the fire departments, the volunteer firefighter recruitment promotion, how well did that go?
I can have a quick, we just had a summary by the director and some of his staff on that, and it's in good shape, and I think within the next month or two, it should be ready to go. Am I correct?
I'll let Adam weigh in. Go ahead, Adam. As soon as it cooks on here.
Yeah, thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. Julianne at the end of the table there has really been leading the project with the fire service and myself as liaison with the chiefs. And we're just about to get our first cut of the video here. We're getting a few different copies, and then we'll be engaging the fire service again on that. And just a reminder, we're also getting so that's a 90-second video. We will also be receiving 2 30-second videos, but it is targeted for year end.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Mitchell. Okay, back to you, Wade.
Okay, thank you. This slide is something we actually reviewed on the January 16th meeting. It's about the increase in education costs, very significant increase of $978,000. We also talked about this RCMP costs for this upcoming year at the January 16th meeting as well. And again, some significant costs in there, $688,000 in the upcoming budget. This next couple of slides just talks about our reserves and what we have in reserves, and the fact that reserves are a very useful tool for the municipality to smooth tax rates over a longer period of time instead of having go up and down. So extremely useful tool. And this one just talks about the various types of reserves that we have as per our the council's special reserves policy that we have. There's operating capital, water utility, and obligatory reserves. And we've already talked a little bit about some of the changes this year in some of these reserves as we complete the budget numbers. It is an integral part of the budget factors.
Okay, Councillor Rhino, you have a question?
Yeah, kind of going back and forth to the fire departments again. I'm sorry, but I missed it when I was out.
Yep.
Risk management, 17.5 from reserves. That was that money that they asked for that increase. Could you explain that, please?
I'm good. Ab, I think, will explain that.
Okay.
Through you, Mr. Chair, could you just refresh me on the question?
It's about the risk management, the 17,500
Oh, yes,
from
yes,
reserves.
yes. So, through you, Mr. Chair, council has a contract with the risk management consultant for the fire service. Very valuable contract, and the chiefs use that service regularly. And I am involved in the discussions, most of them that happen with the risk consultant. Great product. It is in your budget this year as well.
Okay, thank
And
you.
there is a slight increase in there as well.
How much of an increase would it?
I think it's a few thousand. It'll probably be covered off in the operating budget as well. 2,000.
Is that good, Councilor Rano?
Thank you.
Okay.
And this slide simply demonstrates the growth in reserves over the past several years. We're at over $40 million in the various types of reserves at present, which is a very healthy and helpful balance for the municipality to have. And the last two slides are just some examples of existing reserves that we have in the various reserves. It doesn't include any examples from the water utility or obligatory, but there's a wide range of examples in there. The only thing I wanted to mention just before I finish up on these slides is that in the document that you have, the primary document, which is the budget and tax analysis, on this page here, which is page, let's see, it's page 7 in the document, this is the actual operating budget that we're talking about, which encompasses all the numbers that we've talked about here, includes your GTR, your USR, your fire department revenues, your waste management issues. This is the operating budget that we're talking about. And that's it, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. First up to speak, Warden Rolston.
Thank you. I had mentioned at our previous meeting about the beautification funds, and I'm just looking for some guidance. I do intend to move a motion to increase those from $2,000 to $3,000 a year for each district, and I don't know when the appropriate time would be. Right now would be good. All right, then I would move that the figure in the budget reflect $3,000 per district for beautification funds rather than $2,000.
On before the motion, Councilor Rhino.
Okay, first of all, where would the mover respectfully want the money to come from? Other reserves are put in the budget. And also, you know, I'm not disagreeing with another $1,000 in there would be much more, but we're not, that boundary change is not gonna take place until the election, till they take place when the election, you know, the council swore in, so, which is end of October, 1st of November, so there's 2 months, you know, right there for in the calendar year anyway, so I guess, would it be prudent at that time, or should we do it further on down the road, on the next budget cycle?
To the mover? Your intention?
My intention would be to add it to the budget. We could have discussions about where the funding would come from as we discuss, I believe it would be under Parks, Rec, and Culture. Yeah, okay, no, it's under the council budget, so the council budget comes out of general tax rate. We haven't reached the point of debating the things in the different, like in council and Parks, Rec, and that. That would be a discussion that would be had. I just want the document to reflect that. And I guess I thought, oh, okay, Janice has a solution.
Oh, let's hear it.
There, when I had the draft finalized, I realized there was more funds than I realized, so I put it to transportation, general. So I used $144,000 to reserve, so I can reduce that reserve and then pay for your $11,000. So I'm just won't put as much money to reserves for general transportation. And then I'll increase the grant for the beautification.
Budget then, from what I can understand, if we accept that, you're gonna move budget or reserve around, so then this, for that $3,000 for this year, then that extra will come out of that reserve. Am I correct? All right, thank you.
Okay. CAO.
So just looking for some clarity, are you intending that the budget is $3,000, which would mean that over the summer, the counselor in the current area, in the current district, could spend the $3,000 down to zero, plus whatever reserve you have, because you all have balances carried, not all of you, but some of you have balances carried forward. And then the new counselor would come in potentially in November with nothing, or would you like those to be allocated, the extra 1,000 to be allocated in November to the new districts?
If that would not,
I'm trying, just gotta get enough people here.
I'd be content with that if it wasn't too difficult to do, and then whatever counselor is in the new
That's fine, we can do
boundaries
that
at
easily.
that time would have something to start with.
Is that agreeable to the seconder? It is. So, just to clarify, the motion is to increase it to a total of $3,000 for the budget year, with $1,000 becoming available post-election.
Yeah.
Okay.
Councilor Rhino.
That extra 1,000 will become available to the new counselor after, okay.
After
Yeah,
the election.
that I can go.
Councilor Musa.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, I don't know about the other counselor, but is there any pressure on anybody, like, they need that money? Because I don't think like, speaking for me, nobody's asking for that money, and there's limited area that you could use it for. And it's always building up with 2,000, so with 3,000, we're gonna have a lot of money we cannot even spend. I don't know about the other counselors. For me, I don't. If we're gonna do that, we should be able to be more lean to use it other than purification or something like that, because it's full in the bank. Like, I have 16,000, nobody asked for it.
So, Councilor, would you be looking to possibly have a look in the future at
What can we use it?
of
Like,
what
expand
expenditures
the area that we
and
can use
and
it
review
for.
the beautification policy?
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, are you going to make that a motion?
Motion on the floor.
Oh, there's motion on the floor. So we can make that. Okay. All right. Questions been called on the motion.
This will increase it to about 3,000.
3,000 with 1,000 becoming available post-election. The votes are in and it's passed unanimously. So I'll go back. Councilor Musso, were you looking to make a motion to? Okay. All right. That brings us to the end of tonight's session. No, I don't see any. Oh, business plan. Sorry, CAO. I was hoping. All right, CAO, go for it. Sorry, everybody, I tried.
I have 13 minutes left, and I'm going to use them wisely. So councilors, what Wade has gone over is sort of your tax structure and your tax policy and some of your rates and whatnot. What we're going to get into for the next part of the budget presentation is your business plan. So this is sort of the meat of what we intend to accomplish next year. And each one of the departments has a section in your business plans. Each one of them, you're going to see priority one initiatives. So these are things that aren't part of our annual planned activities. You know, so for example, Alana runs day camps every year. So that's not part of, you know, where you would see those new initiatives. So these are things that are new or that we felt important to highlight for council. They have alignment with your strategy. They all come with where the financing is going to come from, how much it's going to be. So we have priority one initiatives and priority two initiatives in each one of the departments. We also have the staffing complement of each department. We have the budget, which is really a master budget of all the cost centers that roll up into that department. So some of them can get a little bit confusing. For example, Parks, Rec, and Culture is parks, recreation, the aquatic center, municipal buildings, municipal properties. So it, you know, there's a lot in those numbers, and we try and break them down for you throughout the budget document, the variances. So we do have the budget highlights that you need to sort of pay attention to, and then you have the significant variances. So what the finance department do is they go through all of the cost centers, all of the general ledger accounts in that cost center, and they look at what has changed from one year to the next. And you saw that sort of in that general tax rate one that Wade showed you earlier. We do those for each of those departments, and that sort of gives you that impact, the net impact on the general tax rate for each department. So all of that to say, these business plans are put together from about October till now. And I do want to thank, before I get started, I want to thank all the staff who have helped pull this together, because it's not a small feat, but especially the finance staff. So Janice and Jordan and Wade have done a tremendous job pulling this together and figuring out all the nuances and especially all the variances. They're kind of things that take a little bit to get your head around. So you folks are also a cost center for us. So I'm going to start with council first before I get into some of our significant initiatives from the department level. So the council cost center, we have an impact on the general tax rate this year of $30,000. That's made up of an increase in your honorarium by 3.2% CPI. We also have in here $15,000 to fund the Nova Scotia Quality of Life Survey. And I did post some information on the agenda for that survey, and it's something that I think council should probably discuss over the long term. If we can get, so there's a little bit of a quirk with the survey, is that when you look at the information I posted, you can see that East Hants is kind of lumped in with the areas around us. And we've spoken to them and said, we'd like to be able to get East Hants data specifically and they're working on trying to figure out whether they can do that. If they can do that, I'd recommend that you pay the money and support the survey, because the level of information in the survey is astronomical. And it's going to give you the ability to sort of really narrow down some of your communities that really need support from the municipality and what kind of support they need, because it's broken down into all kinds of wonderful ways. The other part of that $20,000 is your familiarization bus tour that we're going to have planned for the new council in the fall. So that wasn't something you did last year as an expense, and council asked to have that added on. We do have in this year association membership to the Atlantic Mayors Conference and the travel related to those conferences. So that would be for the warden and myself, I think, to attend one of the two conferences. And those conferences we went to last year, and they were quite valuable from a information and networking point of view. And then we also have an increase in the training budget for equity, diversity, anti-racism training and police advisory committee training that the province recommends police advisory committee members get. So we have some new members of that advisory committee that we've put some training in the budget for. So overall, council, not a huge impact on the bottom line of the budget, but a $30,000 impact on a $595,000 budget. Questions?
We do have some questions coming up. The first one is the warden.
Thank you. This Nova Scotia Quality of Life Survey, refresh me. We discussed this before. What's the gentleman's name?
Danny Graham.
And I thought we made a motion that we were not going to pay the money and participate in that.
No, there wasn't a motion made. There was discussion held, and I was getting more information at the time.
I really remembered a motion, a straw poll or something.
Maybe.
that we were not interested in putting money into it at this time.
I believe that was unless they could provide East Hand specific information.
Well, that's not how I remember it, but anyway, I think there was concern about, even with the postal codes and whatever, that it would be very difficult to drill it down to find. And I don't remember exactly when that discussion was, but
December.
I left that meeting thinking that we weren't supporting it. That's how I left that meeting. Now, maybe I'm remembering incorrectly, but anyway, I would have to be persuaded still.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, the information that we have, we've posted now. I didn't have the information from, I think that very same week, Julianne was going on a call with the group. Whether we have it in here or not, you're going to get the information, just not necessarily for East Hants specifically. And if you can't get that information by East Hants specifically, I wouldn't pay for, contribute to the survey. So that can come out. It doesn't matter to me one way or the other. If it's in here, it's out, but I wanted to give council the opportunity to have that discussion.
Thank you, CAO. Councillor Musa.
Thank you. I'm 100% agreeing with the warden. And on the other thing, the 20,000 for the bus tour, I don't think we should make a decision for the future council to go on a bus tour or no. If they want to go next year, they could add it to their budget. I think we should remove those two, in my opinion, because it's a bad year for taxpayers. Everybody's complaining on Facebook about their assessment and increase in taxes, and I'm looking for a way to find a way to decrease the tax this year. And I think most council will agree with me on that. So I think those 20,000, 35,000, and 15,000 should be left for the next.
They're combined, Councillor Musa. It's 5,000 for the bus tour, 15,000 for the survey, for a total of 20,000.
Okay, 20,000,
and it's
whatever,
funded
20,000 is.
And it's being funded through reserves, so it doesn't affect the tax rate.
What?
It's being funded through reserves, so it's not affecting
Yeah,
the tax rate.
but for me, it's even if it's from reserve is reserve too, so for a reason. I don't think we should make any decision about future council if they want to go on bus tour or not. Like, we should leave it for new council to decide if they want to go on a bus tour or no. They could always take it from reserve. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Warden Rolston.
Okay, I would respectfully disagree, because when we had the discussion, what happens is the new council comes in, and by the time you get to the end of the council term, we're discussing about whether we should have a FAM tour or not. So when we had that discussion this year, we said, well, let's put it in the budget so it's there, and at the onset of a new council, it can be set up. That's not saying they have to go. They could make a decision and say, no, we don't want to go, and that money simply wouldn't be spent. It would go into the year-end surplus or be redirected somewhere else. So I just think the money should be there and available, should a tour be set up, because I do think it's something useful to any counselor, and particularly new people coming on council, and all having that in the budget does is allow that to happen. Like I said, I'll look forward to having some more information on this quality of life survey, and maybe I'll be convinced. I don't know. Thank you.
Thank you, Warden. Councillor Rhino.
Yeah, I remember the discussion around the bus tour, because they planned to do it this spring, and we said that maybe we put that off for a new council. You know, I do remember that, but this quality of life survey, I'm drawing a blank on, but I agree with Councillor Musa, and really, to me, doesn't matter if the funds are coming from reserves or they're being put on the rate. It's still money that we should be very careful with. You know, that could be $20,000 if we don't do this, left in reserve for something more beneficial. So, not knowing much about it, I'd just as soon leave it out right now.
Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. CAO?
Through you, Mr. Chairman. So we can put the quality of life survey on the list of potential reductions to the budget. That's no issue. And then you can make that decision at a later time, but it'll be on the list. The bus tour, as the warden said, if the money's in the budget, we can start arranging it. If council decides in November that they don't want to do that, then we can certainly not do that. And I guess you will hear me say that's coming from reserves a lot as we go through the next section of business plans. And I think the important piece to realize is it is money that was raised at some point. When I refer to but that's coming from reserves, it's just to say that if you cut this particular item hoping that the tax rate's going to go down, it's not. But we absolutely understand the value of reserves because when you run out, you'll know it. And it becomes a lot more painful. So you'll hear us say, and throughout all the slides, it's, funded from reserves, funded from reserves. That's to note just what is going to reduce the tax rate and what's not if you take it from the budget. But again, money in reserves was taken from a tax rate at some point.
Thank you, CAO. Counselor Hebb?
Chair, my first year on council, I remember there was 3 councillors, new councillors that came in that had never been to the Hants North or Mount Uniacke area. There was one that was in the Mount Uniacke area but had no idea about the Hants North area. We don't know how many councillors are going to come back. We don't know how many new councillors are going to be here. I think it's vitally important. If you're sitting here for a councillor for the municipality of East Hants, you should know the most you could possibly know about what's going on in the area itself. Even some of the councillors sitting here, it would be beneficial to them to go around to a bus tour and certain things may be pointed out to them that they won't realize. So I'm fully in support of a bus tour for the new council that comes in there myself. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. All right, seeing no one left to speak, we are reached the time, finally, of adjournment. It is 9:30. So I think this is a good point to stop on here right now, and we'll pick up from this. I believe the next date is Tuesday. So we will return on Tuesday. So I'll be looking for a motion to adjourn budget. Thursday. Thursday for budget. So move to adjourn. Seconder? Seconded. All those in favor? Aye. We are adjourned. Thank you for your efforts tonight.